Okay, well, welcome. Thanks for coming back again to the Do Good Better live stream podcasts hosted by the Harvest Development Group. I'm Scott Selig with the Harvest Development Group. And today we're very fortunate to be share some time with Jeanne Belmonte, who is a management and development consultant. She is based in Virginia, but has clients all over the world. And her firm is called BeneSteps. And they work with nonprofits and for-profit companies, really doing a lot of employee development. And today we'll be talking about reducing stress and distraction from interpersonal challenges and restoring focus and engagement. As we've seen, the workforce here in the nonprofit world has really been affected by COVID-19 and all of the related issues around that. We know also in the for-profit world, we're seeing the same type of issues. And so we're very fortunate to be with Jeanne, who's going to talk to us a little bit about really how to get our mojo back, in a sense.
Absolutely, that is. And so that's what happens through these workshops that I give, that people are learning how to reduce that stress and the distractions from these interpersonal challenges that happen at work, and then restore that sense of creativity, getting all in again, and even, in fact, increasing your value as an employee. And so we're going to talk about restoring your sense of well-being. That's good for you, and it's also good for the whole organization as well. And so I'm going to show you a two-pronged method, and that is to apply your coping skills and then tie them to your basic human needs. And we're going to unpack that later. And so this process is good for you whether or not you're currently working or maybe you're in transition. And we're going to touch that as I share this. So no matter where you are in your career and in your process of working currently or finding something new, we're going to be able to help you through this and give you some great highlights and nuggets as well. And so, well, this is all because you probably know this, that you're at your best when you are fully engaged, you're fully creative, you're collaborating well, and that these interpersonal distractions aren't getting the best of you. Yet studies show that 65% of staff, they reduce their engagement, they reduce their performance after an interpersonal conflict, after an offense. And then 80% of the staff, they report that they lose time working because they're worrying about it. So what do you think of that, Scott? Those stats are oof.
Right. And do you have a number of how many people actually have engaged in some sort of conflict in the workforce?
Yeah, well, there are so many studies about lack of respect in the workplace. It's numerous. And
Right.
it can come through you in many ways. So these conflicts manifest in different ways. Yet if you feel that perceived offense, then people admit their performance goes down. They lose time worrying about the incident. And so here's this opportunity to look at what we are in control of, how we can regain our sense of value. And so that's where I came up with the name of Peace of Mind at Work, because what it means to me is when we're all in, we're collaborating well, all of our creativity is there. And so the opposite of when we lose our peace of mind is through these interpersonal challenges and our responses to them. So the challenges might be a coworker with whom you've butted heads against something or another, or it's a demanding client, or it's an outright offensive, word or action that came your way. But it also might be when you were laid off. Something in that process was wounding as well, and it has you in a particular state of mind in which you have gone from that flash of anger or a feeling of fear, and you've gone down that road towards residual bitterness and residual anger. And that's stressful, and it's a distraction, right? And so we're in that place, we're ruminating negatively, we're spending more time worrying about it, we're thinking the negative thoughts about it. And so if we're doing that, we're not focusing on work or on our next opportunity. We're not focusing on that ability that we have to self-improve and to gain new talents, because we're just in this state of mind that comes and goes, but when it comes, we're lowered. Our ability to engage is lower, and to think creatively and to focus. And it's not good, as I mentioned, for finding that new job either, and even engaging authentically when you have those interviews. You want some of those issues to be lessened, that stress to be lessened, so that your stronger self can come through. So Scott, do those negative thoughts that I mentioned, they get the best of you?
Oh,
Does that sound
absolutely.
about right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of self-doubt when in many ways it could be something out of your control. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of, the current situation with the COVID-19 and the furloughs and the downsizing. I wonder, because there's so many people affected by that, if there could be some sort of support or a feeling that you're part of something that other people are experiencing too, because it's been such a wide range of people that it's affected.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about common human emotions, right? These are common. We all share them. We've been down this road at different times in our life. And so that's why I highlight this two-pronged method that I want to share that you are in control of. So that's things that we do. We want to feel more control. And
Sure.
so first of all, when we're in this state of residual bitterness or residual anger or frustration, we grab for coping skills. And that's natural. We always do it. We do it all the time. Yet we also, though, the opportunity, the second prong, besides grabbing for those and using them, is becoming more mindful and self-aware of which basic human needs you're filling by grabbing those. It gives them more weight, more power, and more control and decision making that you have when you're choosing how to fill these basic human needs, which are driving your choices anyway to grab at these coping skills. And the basic human needs that I highlight are your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. And I mention those four particular buckets, as I sometimes call them, because Harvard Business Review, of all studies, talk about those. And they talk about how they are filled at and through work. So they open up this conversation for us to dive a bit deeper and look at why we were grabbing for these skills. So it makes us stronger, so that the next time that we find ourselves in this residual state of bitterness, this frustration, this upset, we can say, all right, there's a path here. I'm going to feel something deeper inside of me and really make cognitive choices to lower that negative state of mind and give yourself more bandwidth to more creatively engage in it. And it could be in an interview or just with your management and colleagues down the road. So do those two prongs make sense, Scott? Do those
Oh,
make sense to
absolutely.
you?
And I also
Great.
wonder, should if someone's been furloughed or downsized, should they take a break from the search process to, again, maybe feel a little bit better or empower themselves or encourage themselves and then jump back in? Or is it the type of situation where you think someone, shouldn't lose their professional mindset and should just, pivot and look at finding a job as their job? What's your
Sure.
thoughts?
Well, there's a couple of elements there. You are self-assessing. Do you need that time to just step back? And in this particular context of this peace of mind at work, is there anything residual that has you in a state of some bitterness or frustration from your past job, from that past situation, that would be really good for you to resolve? And so that may need to just step back a bit from the hard search, and however long that time takes, but you're grabbing for your coping skills so that you can then be engaged with your strength as you're looking for your next role. So maybe that'll take a day, maybe it'll take a week. It's your timetable, but your opportunity to become stronger from within, to resolve as best as you can, and to lessen those stressors so that you leave more room and for creativity, and you take care of yourself, right? And so let me share some of the common coping skills, because there's the two-prong process. And these are common ones that'll show up in our workshops. And so, of course, one of them is eating comfort food. Come
Really?
on, right?
Yeah.
And that's fair, because studies show that grabbing for coping skills can fill emotional needs. So we talk about raising awareness of our emotional needs and how we fill them. There's multiple ways to fill our physical, our mental, emotional, and spiritual needs. But I bring this up as an example. It's part of that exercise. If it's fair to grab for the chocolate or the chips, but here you have the opportunity to become mindful of how that is balancing and reducing that state of residual bitterness, that state of frustration. And is this enough? Does this reduce that enough for you to open up your bandwidth? Possibly eating the comfort food, you need a few other coping skills as well, right? And most
Yeah,
folks do at least a handful, depend upon the issue in which they're grappling with at the time. It's really put them kind of sideways. And so
sure.
then,
But I think as we see through COVID-19, you see all these people posting cooking
yeah,
projects and people baking and cookies or whatever it might be to fill that need that they have now that they're isolated and not getting those type of social interactions. So I
yeah,
think that feeds right into exactly what you're saying.
right. And the study that I'm thinking of talks about the need of feeling belonging
Right.
is sometimes what we are feeling when we are grabbing for the comfort food. And that's when you're in a state of distress. Other folks grab for comfort food when they're celebrating. And they mentioned that in the study. They want to keep that feeling going and they grab for another slice of pizza because they're so happy. But we're dealing with in this particular environment is regaining your peace of mind. And so the element that even studies show that the emotional need that it fills, and it's different for each of us, but this study particularly points out that need for belonging. And when you've lost your position, you may really feel a big gap. You don't belong anymore, and where do you belong anymore? And so we naturally go and gravitates towards different coping skills. And this is just the opportunity to raise your awareness of, which human need am I feeling? And there's multiple ways to fill them as well. And so, and that brings me to another one. So another common coping skill that folks volunteer and give advice. That's what these workshops are about. People give advice, what coping skills to use to lessen that state of residual bitterness and frustration. And so it's talking with your manager or with a trusted advisor or with a friend. And so that comes up as well. And there's many different layers to unpack and why that works for one person and why it fills a particular need for another. But as an example, some folks find that talking with the manager about the situation or going to a friend about something in the past that they still want to shake off somehow, it fills their emotional need because they're receiving the respect of being listened to. And that's what they want. They want to feel the respect of being listened to. So therefore, that's why they go to that particular manager that's a great listener, or they go to that friend who's a great listener, because their emotional need is to feel more respect. That's definitely just the opposite of feeling that residual bitterness and frustration. And they get filled up in a positive way that way. So that's an example of how one person uses the tactic of speaking and talking with another individual to fill an emotional need. And they become aware of that because that person, though, isn't always available. So that particular coping skill, maybe have a 50% probability of it. And I just share that because as we look at what we're in control of, we're definitely in control of what we choose. We're in control of really mindfully digging to see which basic human needs are being filled so we can really, really choose well. Yet also, we have to think which of the coping skills that we're choosing are 100% in our control as well. So I put that out there, and it's more to unpack, but just to keep aware of.
Sure. So let's say we're on the receiving end of that. We've got a friend or a colleague who's had some issue and they're feeling that bitterness. Is it best for us to give advice or just to listen?
Well, this example is sharing a need of a particular individual. Who knows? They know that I'm going to that person because they are a good listener, right? And so that's why they're grabbing that coping skill. It's not about what the manager or friend's role is, like they have to be a listener or they have to give advice. The individual already is going to that person because they know they're a good listener because that's what they need. Now, maybe their emotional need to be filled is to hear advice. Like, I got to hear advice that'll help change my focus. It'll help change my mental need, right? That talking with them and hearing their advice can help me change my mental focus. And if I'm not focusing so much on the negative, on the rumination, that's great, because that person wants the focus restored. So they'll go to an individual who will give them advice because they know it on the front end. So you're choosing who you go to for what you already know they give.
Okay.
The onus isn't on the manager to say, which need am I filling? You're choosing them, or you're choosing your friend because you know which need you want filled. So does that make sense with
Sure.
it? Okay,
Absolutely.
awesome. And so I thought to also share another coping skill that people give as advice, in these workshop environments. And this one is, once you've cooled down, that there's an opportunity to have the mindset of empathy for the other person, to see them in a bigger context. Because when a word has come to you that has hurt you, and it's all in different degrees of what offense is you're perceiving, there's an opportunity for you to also, as cool down, to see the bigger picture of the person. And there's an opportunity, for example, to recall, oh yes, I remember that their elderly mother moved in with them who is suffering from dementia. Oh, that must be a stressor for them. Maybe that's why they had this outburst. So it gives you a relief from the churn in your mind, because you're thinking of other factors, thinking of other emotions, thinking of the other person as well, that can help reduce your stress, because this is first your peace of mind, so that you can think creatively, so that you can have constructive dialogue as well with that person to gain clarity and understanding. So it's first using coping skills that work for you to reduce that negative rumination, so that you can prepare yourself for these constructive conversations. And whichever coping skills that you use, there's so many more that folks will share. It doesn't mean that workplace justice goes out the window, all right? So if there is a particular offense in which it goes against policy, that's why I put this over here. This is workplace justice. It's in its own silo. And you still have maybe even a professional responsibility to go and to speak to those that handle the policies and procedures. And then return to yourself to take care of yourself, so that you can re-engage, gain your focus again, gain your creativity, make sure you retain, if not increase, your value as an employee, right? And so it's back to yourself. So workplace justice still has its place when needed. And this comes in also for the individual who has lost their position at work, and maybe it was a really, really awkward, professionally tough ending. I mean, there's so many different dynamics that happen. So once again, it's that opportunity to reflect on coping skills you currently grab for, and what are those basic human needs that really are trying to be filled, and then to do it so constructively, to prepare yourself to step forward into those new environments, and reaching out to the new potential employers, right? So there isn't anything kind of left over that can come out in the interview. Gosh, you wouldn't want that to happen, right?
Right.
No, not at all. So, so I share those. And does that make sense to you, Scott? Those different elements?
Absolutely. And I would think that talking to someone, let's say in HR, or someone who's in a role like that, is important, because maybe the offender has multiple times that they've done similar behaviors, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's an opportunity for that person to be educated.
Sure, exactly. And this opportunity of this reflection for yourself and grabbing the coping skills helps you also increase your creative problem solving in that sort of situation. How will you approach HR? And think about when you're a manager, when you're in the position in which you're receiving this. So you have both, as a person going to management, how do you want to approach this individual? This is a working relationship, you're a manager, and you want to bring to this this issue that seems to be possibly out of policy. How do you also want to go in stronger as an individual, clear-minded, solution-oriented? And what a gift that is for your manager who's receiving you. It's tough. So it's tough as a manager to hear that there are these challenges happening out there. Yet if an employee comes to them with a bit more resolve in a positive way, some creative ideas and solutions, a broader perspective, and then says, and here you go. You're the one who's in charge of policies and procedures. Now I'm going to get back to work, and I am going to re-engage. I'm going to collaborate well. And maybe, of course, there may need to be new boundaries and things along that line, but the bottom line is you have the opportunity that you want to re-engage for yourself, to retain and increase your value as an employee and have your peace of mind back. And that's why I call it peace of mind at work, and all those elements that go into it.
Yeah, makes sense. Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, the management, there's also different scenarios in which when managers are working with employees. There are some common ones that are out there when managers maybe need to give corrections, as we talked, to an employee, and different ways in which they do it. Well, how does a manager prepare for that discussion? Right? So there's this work of these coping skills that we mentioned. There are things that the same coping skills they could use before the meeting, before they have the meeting with the direct report. They can look at applying empathy. They can look at different dynamics of that whole person to help them. If they feel frustrated, maybe management, that unique individual is feeling frustrated. How can they lower their frustration level before they meet with this direct report as well? How can they reduce that level of frustration so that they can have creative solutions come to mind? Like, oh, now I know this is an idea of how I can better work with my direct report and inspire them and help them in their own self-correction, in their own ability to do the work, and for us to assess what work could or should they be doing as well. So the opportunity for management to also go through the process of looking at the coping skills that they use when they're frustrated to reduce it, to help them have a more creative mindset when they're dialoguing and working with their direct reports. So that's an opportunity too.
Sure.
Yeah. So all that is making sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, also these sort of these workshop environments, these elements can be used when new teams are getting together. So it's an opportunity for folks to say, all right, as individuals, let's go ahead and it's a self-reflection. What are these coping skills that you're using, and how are they filling your basic human needs? And our basic human needs change. There's some times of the day, the week, the month in which we are just feeling more needs in one versus another. And so that when these flare-ups happen and we find ourselves in possibly going down residual bitterness, but we can stop it more quickly when we're mindful of how we're going to stop it, why we're going to stop it, the benefits that we want. So that's part of this as well, is to even stop that travel, stop the negative rumination sooner than later, because we know the benefits both on the deeper level of our basic human needs, and then as the exteriors, right, of becoming more valuable as an employee and as a future employee as well. So that goes into, so once again, teams, onboarding, folks that want to start a new quarter, off on a new track, on a reflective track, on a stronger track to help strengthen their employees as well. So that's part of how these workshops are used, and the bottom line, the two-pronged process.
And it would actually be a great activity now that we're, most of us are working from home and doing these Zoom meetings and calls. It might be a great time to introduce some of these approaches as we're in this new normal, as we're calling.
Right, and our times are reset because, we can see that we'll be once again in person with one another, yet even over these Zoom calls, we can have the same misunderstandings, right? We can miss cues, and some of the stress is self-induced. Some of the stress that we have is self-induced. We misperceive someone. We get so worried about it. We feel fear. Did we do something wrong? Are we going to be put off the project? You can start to swirl once again in negative ruminations and okay, how to get a grip on that as quickly as possible so you can engage with that person, seek clarity. That's good for you, that's good for them. And we're talking about you getting re-engaged in a healthy way. And so these misunderstandings can happen over Zoom or something that can come out of somebody's mouth and you're thinking, what? What did they say? Wait a minute, did I hear that right? And once again, you can start in that cycle again. And it's natural to have our initial responses of anger and fear when we find something offensive or hurtful or we've been there. Um, and then it's our choice for how long we'll let and how deep the residual bitterness and anger can last, and how it can affect us and how long we choose for it to affect us. So,
Great.
yeah.
And I know that, Harvard's Development, we've created this project called Career Blossoms, and in a way to help all of these displaced leaders in the nonprofit world who have been furloughed or downsized. And we're working on tools to really help the workforce. We believe that there are so many great people out there. There's so many opportunities. The nonprofit community really needs great people, and we want to help not only the nonprofits but also the individuals that make up the nonprofit leadership. So we support Jeanne, people like yourself who are out there helping people resolve these issues, and we're also really involved in helping the nonprofits identify good people, um, and give those people opportunities. And it's so
Yes,
important right now.
absolutely. No, that's beautiful. And there is so much change going on right now. And there's many experienced folks that has so much to offer, and the opportunity for them at this time to reflect on those strengths and all the solutions that they've given before, whether it's both people skills, and those are so strong, right? How they have built up others, and what a gift for them to do that for others when they go into the workplace, when they go into the interview, to share how they were able to empower others, guide them along, which helps make, of course, themselves stronger and the organization stronger as well. So it may, right now our workplace looks different. And so their future work environment will look different as well, because it'll be a different group of folks, yet the same human dynamics exist. And so then there's this opportunity to use these coping skills. So for example, empathy, and I expand that to profound respect. There's an opportunity that when you're going into a new situation, a new group of people that you're getting to know, to mindfully learn about them, the broader picture of who they are, so that when it may happen that either you misperceive what they said to you and you're starting to go down that rabbit hole that's a bit negative,
Right.
or maybe actually an outright offense has occurred, you are ready to bring down your level of stress, your level of distraction as quickly as possible, so that you can then re-engage with them in a constructive way. Or you can also tamper down your own stress response and think, all right, that did come from me more than them, right? But you get to do in advance, that you get to know these people in a broader way, a bigger way, and so that you're filling up your tank, you could say your reserves, so that when a misunderstanding comes, you can more quickly find personal resolve and then have that professional dialogue with them as well. So
Excellent.
it's powerful that way too.
Yeah. So I'm also curious. Are you finding that some of this these feelings might be generational? That boomers and Gen Xers and millennials, they all sometimes act different. They have different behavioral structures, and so maybe some of these issues could be related to just the different generations.
Well, it's our perception, right? And so temperament, personality, sometimes the culture of your generation will see one particular action in another way, but it's so much of perception too. I mean, there's some outright actions that are in the manual. This is against policy, period. And it's very black and white and clear. And then there's gray area, because as an individual, you have your own filters to this. And so in the workshop, we talk about an example of a severe communication style. Well, in the case study, there's one individual that recognizes it as severe, yet implemented some coping skills quite quickly, in which they, right off the bat, were able to get right back to work immediately. Where the other person perceived the same exact communication style in a way that a flash of anger and a flash of fear came through them. And then they ruminated negatively and ended up really in that residual state of bitterness the next day. So there's human filters, individual filters. Some can be generational and some can just be your own temperament, how you were raised, and where you are at the moment of your life as well. Sometimes we're just feeling weak in some of our other human needs, or just feeling low, so that an incident, an interaction in the past wouldn't have bothered us so much. We'd be able to cope well with it and put closure to it. Yet at this moment in our life, we're not. It just flashes anger for us. It starts to ruminate and become a bad situation, just because at that moment, that time, that there's other needs and stressors pressing down on us. And that is where we are right now as well. We are in an environment in which we're experiencing a different type of, it's still stress, but this dynamic is so new to us as a society. So we're piling on, at this time. And so I, share what we are in control of, choosing those coping skills and mindfully tying them and filling these basic human needs so that we regain our strength, our health as well.
So, we're almost out of time. Are there any wrap up or last minute advice you would like to share with us?
Well, remember in this time, this sea change in which we don't necessarily feel the same level of control as we did before, you do have it. You do have it when it comes to dealing with these issues that are still unresolved in yourself. Those times of the frustration that is still lingering, the residual bitterness from a hurt that is still lingering, and the opportunity to put that at bay, which is good for your health. It's good for your mental and emotional well-being and spiritual as well. You have this opportunity and this time to do it now, and you are in control of that, even as the other circumstances aren't.
Great. I just wanted to, again, thank you again for participating with us. This has been illuminating. I also wanted to, again, emphasize this project that we're creating here at Harvest Development called Careers Blossom. Riley is leading that effort. If you'd like more information on that, you can contact us at roots@harvestdevelopmentgrp.com. And if you're interested in learning more what Jeanne is doing, you can contact her. Jeanne, do you want to share your best way to contact you?
Sure. So Jeanne Belmonte, Jeanne, Belmonte, Belmonte at BeneSteps, BeneSteps.com.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
It
Take
was
care,
a
everyone.
pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
And take care. Be healthy. Thanks.